before we get to my interview with Jesse Brown, CEO of the Himalaya Exchange, it's time for another segment of Future Shock 2.0 with Ira Wolfe. Ira Wolfe, welcome back to Future Shock 2.0, the post-pandemic economy and jobs. Where are we headed?
Thanks, John, for having me back. So I rely on economists to predict this, and they're all over the board. I think the one thing that they agree is that we're approaching and we will enter a recession. How deep it is, how long it is, how dramatic it is up for grabs. Some people think it'll be short-lived. Some people think it'll be deep. But one of the most fascinating parts of this is that despite the fact that our GDP is declining in the first quarter, and many expect in the second quarter it'll decline as well, and through the rest of this year, the unemployment rate is not expected to change a whole lot. Just to give people a little bit of background, the U.S. has experienced 12 recessions since World War II. In each of those, the average unemployment rate, actually it's not the average, the lowest the unemployment rate was 6.1. Last month that we have is 3.6. What everybody's talking about is that we're probably familiar with the term jobless recovery that we've had in recessions. They're talking about a JobFull downturn, that whether we have a recession or not, the GDP is going to be slower than it was. Our economic aren't going to be what we experienced over the last few years, that there is going to continue to be a shortage of labor, that hiring will continue, maybe at a slower pace. Maybe we won't have 11 million open jobs. Even if we cut that in half, we have 6 million open jobs. That means that there's basically still, we are at zero unemployment at that point because there's only X number of people looking for jobs that are available. It's zero-sum game. So it's going to be super interesting. And just to give a reference, in June, which is the latest numbers we have, 1.3 million people were collecting federal unemployment. That's less than what it was pre-pandemic. So even if we have an uptick, it's still going to be what it used to be. But in comparison, between 2007 and 2009, there were 6.5 million people receiving unemployment benefits, the last major recession that we had. It's going to be a really odd recovery from the labor standpoint, because if anybody's thinking this is going to be a great time to lay off people, to rethink, I mean, some companies are going to have to consider layoffs, but the good companies are really rethinking that. They can't afford to lose people. Baby boomers, if they let them go, probably aren't coming back at this point. They were on a yo-yo for years. Baby boomers got laid off. They came back. They laid off. They're not around anymore. And the younger generations may not take fold of this. And I'll close with just this. I did an interview the other day on my podcast. It was from Kevin Grossman on the Talent Board. They study candidate experience and where the candidate mood is at this point. And he was in an event, a tech event in San Francisco. And they were talking about all the layoffs. And the tech companies that were there literally just said, send them our way. The tech companies are still hiring like crazy, the good ones. So you hear the news about the Teslas and the Meta and the Apples and the Googles, the big companies that have a lot of employees. But there's a lot of smaller tech companies that are still actively hiring because even in the IT space, cybersecurity, they're short 600,000 people. 600,000 workers right now. Cybersecurity is not going away. It's still thriving. And they anticipate 3.5 million cybersecurity employees are going to be needed in the next 4 years. So there are some fields, healthcare is another one. It's going to be a very, very interesting post-pandemic JobFull downturn, and we'll see what type of recovery.
That was Ira Wolfe, and we'll have more from Ira next week. Ira is a workforce trends expert, author, and a top 5 global thought leader on the future of work and HR.